everyone. Happy Thursday and welcome to TFR. May you seek Christ, may you find Christ, may you love Christ. Saint Josemaria wrote those words as a dedication to a book he gave to a young architecture student. These words are also the guiding principle behind Thursday's Faith Refresher. Today, we want you, the TFR regular students, to know more about Saint Josemaria, the founder of Opus Dei, and his message. We will show a 28-minute video about him and testimonies of people who got attracted to his message and started a relationship with Jesus Christ without leaving their day-to-day ordinary life. Then guess what? The present prelate, Msgr Fernando B. Ocariz, will visit us here in the Philippines from July 25 to August 10. We invited a guest, Ms. Esperal, who stayed in Rome for 3 years, who will share her experiences with the prelate, whom we lovingly address as the Father. We will also show you short clips of gatherings with the Father. And yes, we hope to see you on July 30 in MOA Arena for a get-together with the prelate.
You can stay right where you are, and you can put love into your work and bring holiness into that work. And that really is the message, the Catholic message of both Vatican II and Opus Dei. My favorite teaching of St. Josemaria, the universal call to holiness, that somehow my job is to find holiness and to bring holiness into ordinary circumstances like this one.
There was a man who was born in a small town in Spain at the turn of the last century in 1902. He was the adored child of a devout Catholic family, a loving spiritual family that suffered the death of 3 children and the loss of both their financial and social standing in their community. Despite these hardships, the family of Josemaria Escriva remained close to each other and close to God. 100 years later, on October 6, 2002, that man was canonized by Pope John Paul II. His life and teachings had become an inspiration to hundreds of thousands of people around the world. People who aspire to live the message of Saint Josemaria. People who believe as he did that sanctity, loving and carrying out God's will, is possible for ordinary people. As a young priest, Father Josemaria Escriva felt a deep yearning to do more, to be more. He prayed constantly, striving to understand what God was asking of him. One day, after years of thought and prayer, he saw what God wanted him to do: to proclaim that all people can become saints while living ordinary lives in the world, and that what God asks of each of us is to do just that. Later, he would name the institution he founded to spread this message Opus Dei, the work of God.
His view of Opus Dei was always very much that it's just a little piece of the church. It's the Catholic Church lived in a special way, but really basically just the church.
Josemaria Escriva was a quiet, humble man who had enormous charisma. He was a man of prayer and reflection who spent his life connecting in a profound way with each person he met. And he was always fully present.
What I can tell you about St. Josemaria was that he was a father. He really was a father, and a father with a motherly heart.
If St. Josemaria were here in this room, what would he think?
I think he would be excited that there are people in the work that live and breathe corporate America and don't want to leave it to pursue a life of holiness. Ampersand selected equals comma 6. Within Christianity, there are those who view the pursuit of wealth as sort of an evil. And so you have to be dirt poor and you have to shun technology. And then on the other side of the spectrum, you have people who equate business success with a sort of holiness, if you will. It's sort of the prosperity, Christianity. Well, God blesses me because I won this business deal, I think that God, for the most part, stays out of our business. He gives us human talents, and he gives us at times inspiration and insights. But he expects us to work for what we get, and it requires, sacrifice.
There's whole books of the Old Testament that lay down in great detail what can be offered to God and what can't. And he says, I want the lamb that's 1 year old, male, without blemish. I don't want the mangy goat.
It's nested in this grid.
If we're going to say to God, this is the manifestation of my love for you, well, we don't want it to be a mangy goat. We want it to be something as good as we can make it.
I got to play well. If I can't offer it up, I try to win.
So your intention.
It's just the intention, right? God's a little bit more merciful than the world. The world judges you only by results, and God kind of judges you by effort. It takes tremendous courage and God's grace to follow Catholic orthodoxy. The culture of life is one that embraces life at all stages, one that rejoices over the birth of a baby and doesn't roll its eyes over the nth baby because n-1 was the ideal number. A culture of life is one who loves a person who is aging beyond their normal productive human capacity. 5 fabulous kids. I have a hard time keeping up, probably hear that quite a bit, but they are so full of life and they give so much joy back. They're beyond any expectation that we can have.
I was a crash firefighter. I was stateside here in the high desert, George Air Force Base. Then I went to Korea. That's where I met my wife. We've been married 18 years now. I have 4 children. Then after that, I came onto the LA City Fire Department. The cantaloupe, tomatoes, everything just needs to be chopped. I would say the work is kind of my work. I mean, how I fit in to the big scheme of things. And primarily, it's just the ordinary things done well. I have what they call a plan of life. Just like any athlete, they exercise, they eat right, they listen to a coach. Well, I start the day off with first stop turning to God. I make a morning offering. After reading the life of Msgr Escriva and learning of what he had to say about prayer, it's very simple, I think. It's just find quiet time to speak with our Lord. I say the rosary daily. Aspirations, which are basically just invocations to God, almost like a dart sent. We gotta go. We gotta run. Like going into fire, sometimes there's a lot happening, and just, Lord, give me the confidence and the strength to carry out my duties. And let's let everything work out fine. Really giving all of my attention to the task at hand. That I've been taught as prayer as well. Just seeing the firemen go by down the street when I was a little kid kind of like just drew me. And the camaraderie with the guys here, the friendships that you make with them. And then working as a team, that's a big thing. If everything goes well, by the end of this year, I should be promoted to captain. So I'm looking forward to that. I've spent 5 years in the U.S. Air Force as a firefighter, and then 17 years now with the city of Los Angeles. So I'm ready to supervise firefighters.
Right down the street, and we make all our ice creams fresh there.
You want to just leave the tray? St. Josemaria would talk about the idea that wherever you are, whatever you're doing, you're there for a reason. God put you there for a reason. And you get to find out what that is. I was very nervous about how my own convictions about my faith, my morals, were going to interact with the craziness of Berkeley. You know, it's like, okay, I want to meet people, I want to make new friends, but how do I make it clear to them that I want to live this way, or that I have these certain beliefs? You know, they're going to think I'm crazy. Problems and whatever, academic, moral. And then slowly, you know, with people I would meet, with the different girls in my dorm, what I've come to realize is that I just want to, when I'm talking to somebody, I just want to say, this is what I believe, and not make any apologies for it. You know, and I found that that's attractive to people.
You've just had a very difficult tragedy in your family life.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me what happened.
Almost exactly a year ago, my mother passed away at the age of 49. So, the ripe old age of 49. I remember still getting the call. I was sitting at a Starbucks, up actually just over the hill, studying for finals. And, you know, hearing that she was in the hospital, it was a blow. Within a month and a half, she was gone. And it was tough. It was a tough week, it was a tough month, it was a tough year. I was very angry at God. I thought, you know, how could he need her more than we do? Like, what was God thinking? Was he on vacation that day? You know, I got to a point where I wasn't praying. And I just remember sitting in my car one day, just crying, you know. And I had my little Palm Pilot, so it was sort of modern day crying, because I was kind of journaling. I was thinking, like, what is wrong? What's, you know, why aren't things working out? Even just sort of within me. And I thought, there's something missing. And then it kind of dawned on me. I was like, oh, this is what it's like to starve your soul, you know, when you don't pray. And I was like, oh, okay, it's a lot more clear to me now. I remember kind of sitting down and being like, I can't do all this myself. I'd like to think that I can, but I can't, and I need your help. So I just have to give these things to you. And I think that actually took a big load off, to say, like, it's not all my responsibility. You know, I'm going to do what I can do, and then say, okay, you have to take the rest of that.
Oh, this smells so good.
Doesn't it smell good? And a lot of times with St. Josemaria, I think that call to holiness, that universal call to holiness, and I also read that as the universal call to happiness.
She's the executive chef.
You know, that through this route, if you want to live a certain way, you will be the most happy that you can be.
Bless us,
The Lord, in these thy gifts which you are about to receive from thy bounty through Christ our Lord. Amen.
St. Josemaria would say that God calls us, all Christians, through baptism, and then personally, one by one, he calls us by name. And then, in the midst of our ordinary lives, he calls us again to be women of God and to be men of God.
It's a little bit of both a heart grab and a head grab. This was the first time in my life someone had told me that I am called to be a saint, and the way that I do that is through my ordinary work that God has called me to do here in the middle of the world, without becoming a priest or joining a monastery or anything. This is what I am supposed to be doing to become a saint. Nobody had ever told me that before, and that profoundly affected me. My wife and I had always wanted to live in the country and have some acreage where our kids could run around and raise some of our own food. Got to the point in my professional work where it didn't really matter where I lived. I tell you, I don't think being a husband or being a father comes naturally to most men. I think it's a very difficult thing. And I'll say very honestly, like a lot of men, I am not naturally a kid person. But the teachings of St. Josemaria have helped me see that fatherhood and being a husband is my vocation. It's where God wants me to be, and it's the way God wants me to live my life. So I'm not the best husband that I can be yet, but I'm... No, I never. And she'd be the first to say it. But,
the imperfections of Chris.
Yes.
What's the number one imperfection?
The camera's still rolling. I think it's really it's selfishness with my own time, wanting to have my own time and my own place where I can go and be by myself. St. Josemaria says somewhere, you know, God is a great stone cutter. He uses a chisel like he's making a statue, and he sees the perfect image underneath the block of granite. For a lot of us, marriage and family life and the challenges of it are the hammer and the chisel that God uses to shape us into the more generous and more attentive and more loving kinds of people that he wants us to be.
I tell my kids all the time that it's not my job to make them happy. It's not their job to make me happy. And things can't make us happy, and money can't make us happy, and people can't make us happy. The only thing that can make us happy is loving and obeying God. St. Josemaria was instrumental in my coming to understand that. I always wanted to marry somebody who was really committed to God,
examination of conscience,
and knew his faith well and could really be the spiritual leader of the family.
that I'm in the presence of God.
I mean, I'm no wallflower. I'm no kind of shrinking violet, you know. I'm a lawyer. I have opinions and express them willingly all the time. But I wanted to marry somebody who was strong in the faith and committed to marriage till death do us part. He's not in it for the long haul. He's in it for the forever haul.
Usually I round up the kids, move the sheep from one area to another so they can go get some fresh grass, go open up the buildings, let the chickens out. See, St. Josemaria has told us we need to be a contemplative in the middle of the street, which can be pretty tricky sometimes, you know, if you're literally in a street. In a farm, it's much easier. The agricultural parables from the Bible are all around you. A couple summers ago, we had a sheep went down with an injury. The vet wrote her off and said, you know, if you want to try, you can, but don't expect her to make it. But we took that as the gauntlet being thrown down, and I was out here nursing her, literally, you know, back to health, and she made it. She's out there with the other sheep now, and you understand about leaving the 99 and going to tend to the one that really needs the help. And you know, I could go on like that for hours about the different ways that, you know, things on the farm remind you of, you know, the spiritual life and really help feed one's prayer.
I started learning to cook about 5 years ago. The gardening has just been the last 3 years, and the canning has been the last 2 years. I'm kind of a work in progress. I get almost no moments alone. Some people knit for that, some people jog for that, I garden for that. And sometimes I pray and sometimes I just think. And sometimes I don't think, I just work. Hey guys!
Don't hurt Mr. Jason. Hey buddy. This fellow who's my best friend, we were on the bench press and he was spotting me and he was leaned over and he had this scapular. I said, what's that? And he'd seen me at church before at St. Bernadette's, and he said, you don't know about our Blessed Mother and the scapular? And you know, I said, no. And he was kind of a jerk about it and was telling me, well, you need to learn about, you know, and this guy was like, We almost got into an argument right there in this gym. It took him a year to get me to go to this Opus Dei evening recollection. Afterwards, I went out with a guy. He was in med school at the time. This was in the 90s, and healthcare was the big, we got to cut healthcare costs. And I said, aren't you concerned, about not making as much money, as a physician? And he just looked at me and says, no, I'm not doing it for the money. I'm doing it to take care of children. At that point in my life, I just want to make a lot of money. But this message of having a deeper meaning with our work and being a married husband or a good salesman or a doctor to take care of other people, that was the message. It was so simple, and it wasn't intellectual. I could see these guys trying to live it. That's from not even Catholic. That's the truth. I mean, we're happiest when we're taking care of other people because we're not thinking about ourselves. That makes sense.
How did you and Wendy meet?
I was her sales trainer when I got out of college, the first year after I got out of college. And like I tell people, it's the best sales job I've ever done. And so that's how we met, and then we got married a year later. And she converted on my birthday. We were at Mass, because she would go to Mass with me every Sunday. And she leaned over to me and said, well, I'm going to become Catholic. Happy birthday.
I kind of gave it to him as a birthday present. So thinking I was doing kind of him a favor, but really it was kind of God drawing me in. That's also when Vince met Opus Dei for the first time. And over the next course of a few years, I started seeing him have a lot of changes and becoming this kind of manly man of prayer, I like to jokingly call him. And but he just became a great spouse. I'd just come home from, I don't know, doing whatever, grocery shopping, and there'd be a beautiful vase of flowers. And it's not my birthday. It's not, an anniversary. And the card would, just be something sweet. Wendy, thanks for being my wife.
What'd you do good today?
I played with David good today.
We had Nicholas, our first son, who was born in '97.
Aren't they neat?
And then David, who was a little bit of a struggle too. We had a long hospital stay with him, but he got here safe and sound in '98.
They'll try to bite your finger.
And in 2000, in August, we had James, our first son, who had a genetic disorder that was fatal. And so he lived for 6 days. It still brings tears to my eyes to think about him. It was very, very hard to live through, humanly speaking. But as a Catholic and wanting to be Christ-like, I had to unite my suffering with Jesus' suffering, which he did for me, for everyone. James brought us great joys, our greatest joys and our greatest sorrows. But he also taught us what to love was. You lose a child, then you realize what life is. Life is such a gift. And there's baby Johnny. He's the next baby in this baby book. And then, of course, Johnny was born in 2001.
He is so handsome, isn't he?
And then about 8 weeks ago, on May, let's see, what was the date? May 2nd, we had William Phillip, who also had the same genetic disorder as James did. And he lived for 4 days. William was a huge part of our family.
The ties that bind my parents and my brothers.
William had a purpose. As a mother, I'll probably cry. I still do a lot. But you always want your child to hold. But there again, I have to use those moments of tears for something good.
Why didn't you stop?
Why? If we stopped after James, we wouldn't have John, and if we stopped after Johnny, we wouldn't have William. So it's the incarnation of our love.
I really connect with the spirit of holiness in the world where you are in your state of life. I'm married, I've run businesses, I've been in corporate, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a son, I'm a brother. What does holiness even mean? It's this being in the world, right where I am, being natural in who I am, building an interior life, meaning a personal closeness to God, and letting that and the situations of life dictate how I relate to others. I never thought I'd have 5 kids coming on 6 kids. I've always loved kids, but as far as my own, in my own life, that was not like a vision that I had. But I do, you know, without sounding too syrupy, I mean, when Naomi was born, it was a life changer. I mean, it just, from the moment I saw her, it changed my life. And with Leah, Rachel, Therese, Colette, they just continue to really, you know, bless me and bless our life.
A full cup or a half cup?
A half cup, please.
Okay.
The girls love ritual. I think all kids do. So they want to know when things happen, when's my turn. And we set up early on with the older girls Saturday morning breakfasts. They set it up and we make the batter and you know, make the pancakes, and one plate goes upstairs, one plate goes downstairs. So it's like the whole ritual that's grown out of that. But that time is really, it's special for them and for me. Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me.
I loved being part of a big family. There was always somebody around to play with. There was always something to do. It was great fun. I hope, you know, to be able to give that to my children also.
It's just a Melanie effect. When she comes into the room, she's so natural. She's just Melanie, you know, and she's just there. And people get this sense when they talk to her that she's present.
What does it mean to be present?
In the moment, being in the moment. Deal with tomorrow, deal with now, and not lose that moment.
Get down to the moment. He says life, as you really look at it, is the moment. Future is in God's hands. Past is in God's divine mercy. Now we have the moment.
Doing the work of God is the lived expression of St. Josemaria's teachings. For the people we have visited here, and the uncounted number of others throughout the world who strive to be joyful, to spread joy, and to keep joy in their hearts, the teachings of this man, this saint, will forever enlarge our vision to encompass ordinary people who aspire to live a holy life.
The canonization, were you there?
Yeah. Oh, I was there. They sent me a VIP pass because I'm the relic. They put me over there on the left-hand side. We were all in our suits and everything. And I was saying to myself, holy Christmas. Here I am. You know, this guy and I had pizza together. And I tell that to kids at school, I'm the only guy that had pizza with a saint, you know. And I see him there, and I'm saying to myself, my Lord, how God can work. Huh? He just took this little guy. Great.
Let me introduce to you our guest. Zora Esperal works as a people manager in a multinational company, IQVIA. She is involved in developing and honing researchers on evidence-based data of new medicines in the fields of oncology, psychiatry, cardiology, and infectious diseases. She is the current board of director and committee head for Policy Making of Philippines Clinical Research Professionals, Inc. She also studied Masters in Theology, specializing in bioethics in Australia before going to Rome. In Rome, she spent 3 years studying theology in Pontifical University of the Holy Cross Institute and had the chance to meet Monsignor Fernando Ocariz, the present prelate of Opus Dei. Here, she is to tell us a bit about her encounters with the prelate.
Hello, Clara. Thank you so much. And yeah, I'm looking forward to tell my story. And I thought first putting a context, when we call the Father, it actually reflects the spiritual family of Opus Dei. Opus Dei is a spiritual family. That's why Saint Josemaria, this video you just seen, we call him our Father. But before he passed away, he was also called the Father. So there's only one Our Father, which is Saint Josemaria, and the Father there is really more of paternity. And I'm putting this here just to put a context. Okay. So here, see the paternity of God the Father going to Saint Josemaria, because it's like he is imparting to us the spirituality of Opus Dei, which he received from God. And here, okay, let's first talk about which is not, right? Like here you have God the Father, Saint Josemaria, and then the paternity passed on to Blessed Alvaro, who is the prelate, and then passed on to Father Javier Echeverria, who's the second prelate, and then the Father Fernando. So this is like a big X. Because if you're going to do like this, the paternity will be like lesson, right? You're going from the paternity of Father Javier comes from Blessed Alvaro. So what I want to emphasize now is that in Opus Dei, like, okay, God Father, the paternity the paternity, our Father of Saint Josemaria comes from the paternity of God the Father. And actually the three prelates of Opus Dei are getting that special grace of being the Father directly from Saint Josemaria. Okay, so that's the context. And then the second one, where's my story coming from? It's really more because I am a numerary member of Faithful of Opus Dei. So in Opus Dei, we have one vocation, but different circumstances. So we have 3 types of members, depending on your circumstance. So we have, most of them are actually married. That's why in the video, you have all those families, right? Big families who are trying to pass on the Christian teachings to their children. And then a very small percentage are those people who are dedicating themselves, who saw their vocation to be fully dedicated to God. So that means they're not going to get married, they're not going to have form their own family, but as the Father now would say that the essential vocation of these members of Opus Dei, I'm a numerary, so I'm one of those. And we also have the associate members of Opus Dei, who receive that special gift of celibacy, that special gift of mirroring in our lives the life of Christ, who is fully dedicated to the works of his Father. Okay, so that's my context. And then, so why Rome? Because for numeraries, we have this possibility of studying for 3 years to go deeper in our vocation, the spirituality of Opus Dei, and at the same time to study theology. We lived in a center of Opus Dei, and that center is dependent to the Father. So it's like the Father Fernando, is actually taking care of all the means of like all the talks that we receive. Like here in TFR, you have like series of talks, right? So there's a mind behind it. So in the same way that when I was in Rome, it is the Father who is actually taking care of our talks, the topics that we will receive. So that's quite special. But at the same time, the Father would always say, "You're not special." He would say that you're here because no one else is available. Yes, it's true that we're just here to pass on whatever we receive. And hopefully for tonight, I can give to you a bit of light, hopefully, of that special persona of the Father in Opus Dei. Okay, so let me share my screen. Okay, so Roman highlights. Okay, so from the Philippines, I was working in clinical research. I am trying to find drug development, and then there's this opportunity of going to Rome. Okay, and this is the first photo I had with Father Fernando. I mentioned earlier, he is the one who would take care of own formation, spiritual formation, and with that in mind, he greeted the first years. So because there are like three years, right, that I stayed there. So and in this photo, I presented the father the father with a card, pop-up card, but I said, okay, Father, can I ask you to open the card? So and then when he opened the card, his surprised face of wow, so this is like a boat trip. From the Philippines, I had friends who like wrote letters to the father and letters about what they've been doing, and also in this card, we also like place like marks of what part of the Philippines they all came from. So I think that's a detail. And faithful of Opus Dei are not the only ones who can write to the Father. You would hear stories of people writing to the Father, and I would always encourage my friends like, hey, let's write to the Father because it's his opportunity to read our letters. So feel free to do that. And who knows, maybe you'll receive a response because you will have more possibility, right? So this one, and then I'm thinking we'll talk to you more about the personality of the Father, my encounters with the Father. And the first characteristic that I want to share with you is the characteristic of the Father to listen. Okay, so for that, I'll give you a bit of context because the Father, by profession, right, he's a professor, a theologian, and he specializes in Christology. And his personality, you have different temperaments, right? So the Father's temperament, his persona is very quiet. He wants to listen more, and he's very calm. He actually exudes serenity, if you will notice it during the get-togethers, hopefully in person. So there, his capacity to listen. And I'll just share to you very quickly, like, as I've said, you can write to the Father's story, like many things, right? So in my case, in a very simple way, I told the Father that, Father, I just wrote a very small note, actually in a post-it, but in Spanish. I said, Father, please pray for my family members who had COVID when I was in Rome. So I sent this to him. And in a very family way, he actually gave me back this photo with saying that this is he blessed it for praying for my family. So that's really how the atmosphere is with the Father. And I would say the second characteristic that I want to share with you is that he's very approachable. It's easy to just approach him. Okay, and just to tell you a story, also there in Rome, because whenever, as I mentioned, the Father would also visit the place where I am staying, and we would have like similar things that we're going to have very soon, get-togethers with him. And in one get-together, I shared to him, like, Father, I came up with this workshop for some also faithful of the word, talking to them about the Stephen Covey workshop. And then I told him, Father, can you please sign my certificate? Because I want him to sign this. It's in Spanish, sorry, because language in Rome, there's Spanish, because Saint Josemaria is from Spain. But the Father can actually understand English. So you can talk to him, but slowly, slow English. And I would hear stories that, like, for instance, when he went to US and Canada, before going to the trip, he would have like English lessons with someone in his house in Rome. So don't worry, you can freely speak to the Father in English, but just very slowly. And yeah, and actually with this, just going back here, I said, Father, can you please sign my certificate so I can just photocopy, and then, like that, that familiarity with him. And then he teased me, and then he said, like, maybe there's like something here in the certificate if I will affix my signature. And then he was like, he hesitated a bit. He said he hesitated a bit, and then later on he said, okay, give me that certificate. So I think it's also how, in terms of formality, like, that he's the prelate of Opus Dei, he's the Father, but at the same time, you can tell him about anything, and you will feel, I think, because of the serenity that he exudes, you can easily open up. And then the second one, like just to give you some ideas, I think the get-togethers with him. Sometimes he would just show him like whenever he enters or exits the room. Personally, I showed to him like a photo of my nephew who just got baptized, or a photo of my aunt who is sick. So that one, because we know that the Father really prays for the things that we ask him. Okay, and then that's another characteristic which I want to share with you is his humility. So the Father has a great mind. Like I would hear stories of people who were his students, also great theologians in Rome, and then one of them mentioned to us that I only retained few notes when I was in Rome, and it's the notes of the Father, being his professor, because he exuded this clarity in terms of conveying his ideas. And with that great intellect, what impressed me is also his humility. So just to share with you that the Father worked a lot with Cardinal Ratzinger, then the Pope Benedict XVI, under the Congregation of the Faith. And when I was able to organize like a seminar there about Joseph Ratzinger. I invited the Father up, and I also asked him, because I know that he worked a lot with him. I asked him, Father, what did you learn from Pope Benedict, Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI? And you'll see when he heard that question, he actually took time. So maybe in the get-together, you will see that he's a very reflective person. He would take time, and there's like silence, maybe just count 5 seconds, because he tries to compose things, no? And when we were waiting for that response, some of the people commented that they saw how the Father, they think that there were a lot of fond memories with Pope Emeritus. And then he started explaining that one of the things that he was impressed about Pope Benedict XVI is his humility, because he said that during his meetings, even with that brilliant mind, he would allow the people to talk first before giving his opinion. And I said, wow, and I can say, at least with my own observation, that this is also what we see with the Father, that even with his great mind, he really likes to listen to the people and then gives his ideas soon after listening to the people. And the third and last thing which I want to share is also that the Father is very gentle. You'll see that he's very gentle and meek, and yet he is also strong. In what way? Because he can also talk about sensitive things, but with a lot of gentleness. He can correct people when needs to be corrected. He calls things by their names, like really saying that, when something is wrong, he can actually say that there and then, no, that's wrong, and this is what we have to do. So that's what impressed me a lot. And actually, just to invite you and to prepare you for the coming of the Father, that we have his letters there in the website. Later on, I'll show you. And his letters talked about something that needs to be corrected, or something that we need to improve in. And that is what I like about the Father. And hopefully during the get-together, he would also talk about certain topics, like about the importance of the family, the unity of the family, about freedom. That's what he likes to talk about a lot, because he knows that only when we learn how to be truly free can we love, right? And this one, before I show you the website, this is actually the last get-together that we had with him before we left Rome. So this is the Father. And just imagine like living with him, and he would visit us at least once a month, having those get-togethers with him during big feast days of the church, and even big feast days of Opus Dei as a family. So we were all like very emotional, like, oh, we're going to miss this get-together, this being with the Father, very near with the Father. And yet, I would say that no one cried during this get-together, because he exuded calmness the whole time. And the last memory that I had, because I tried to run, and I said, Father, he was already in the car about to leave, and I said, Father, I'll see you in the Philippines, in Spanish. And then I remember him like looking at me, because looking at me, and then he actually just winked, and that's his response. And now I'm quite happy that it's going to be a reality, for not just for me, but for the whole country, for the Philippines. So that's it. And maybe just some tips on how to prepare for the visit of the Father, or Father Fernando Ocariz. I do invite you to go to opusdei.org, and from there you can see a lot of websites here. But if you want to know more about the context in the Philippines, you just click here. And then the Prelate is all about the Father, who he is, all his homilies, pastoral letters, and audio meditations. And yeah, so I think for us to really appreciate that get together with the Father, I think it's also good to like, wow, what was he talking about the whole time? And yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Zora. We want to give time to people to ask questions.
So the question is, Father Fernando into sports? Actually, yes, he's very sporty. He likes tennis. And also, I remember a story that when he was younger, he actually biked like maybe around from the center of Rome to a place that is around almost 100 kilometers away from Rome. So that's how he is. Like, he's very sporty.
Zora, how was it in the classroom with the Father?
The first impression or the aura that he exuded is that he's very approachable. So there's no formality at all. Be yourself. You can be at ease being with the Father. What language does he speak? Okay. As I actually have because he's been studying English, and he knows that many of his children are English speakers. So I am aware that the Father is studying English. He would have conversations, and being a professor, he can read articles in English. It's really more of the talking. This is different if you talk, right? Instead of reading. So I know that he can read English. He can read our letters. And he also speaks French because he was born in France. And he actually, I think he is also attached to that country because it's where he grew up in. Does he like music? What type? Yes, he's into classical music actually. And when I was in Rome, we got to know that he was inspired by one of Mozart's symphony when he was thinking about joining Opus Dei. So that's how cultured the Father is. He's into classical music. So he rests well with classical music. So when we would have get-togethers, some people would play. Used what qualities of our Father, Saint Josemaria, you think the Father embodied the most? In terms of spirituality, I would say that, as I've mentioned about going back to that idea of fatherhood, actually, I remember the Father after his trip here. One of the things that he shared, that he opened up to us, is that the first time that he went to because he just became the father in 2017, and during the first get-togethers he was like taken aback hearing people the Father, because it's something that is new for him. And yet he said that he realized that it's really the gift of God to Opus Dei to have that special love for the Father, whoever he is. So I think that's I would say that the paternity, that charity, that love, that interest that Saint Josemaria would have for his children, it's very much in the Father right now. Would you know of an anecdote on how the Father delivers or gives a fraternal correction? I remember like an anecdote I heard, because it's very gentle, that actually you don't know, because sometimes when you say delivers or give fraternal correction, like solemn, right? Like you set aside a person, like, hey, you have to do this. It's like very serious. But with the Father, I remember a priest like narrating that he said that actually he realized that it's already a correction when the Father mentioned to him about something, like about this thing that happened, that it shouldn't be, right? And then that's it. It's very like fatherly, very gentle way of pointing out the fault to the person. Are there protocols to follow when writing to the Father? Does the letter need to go through the center or our director? You just write letters. Feel free to write, and just to give you, maybe for order's sake, you can also give it to the center. But I know that some letters that are coming from those who are not faithful of the work, you can directly send it to the office in Rome. So where do you find that? Actually, if you have a prayer card, it's just here. The address there is actually the address in Rome where you can send it to. So if you want. Does he read all our letters? All our letters, he would want to read our letters, and all the letters are read for sure. But when, I don't know, maybe we were actually like thinking that to give him a lot of letters from the Philippines so that when he travels, instead of like during his travel time going to Australia, maybe instead of like reading a book, we will ask him to read all our letters. Want to give the father something from the Philippines? What do you suggest? So since after the visit in the Philippines, he will go to Indonesia, and then after that he will go to Australia because it's very near. So I would say better not to give something bulky. This is just my interpretation, because the father now is actually talking about social justice. I think that's also one of the things that he might touch on when he visits. That call to really help alleviate poverty. So I would say that you can also like support maybe instead of gifts that he can bring, you can support like activities that are directed to help or outreach activities. That's my idea. Does he do the trip often? Yes. Whenever it's like summertime, he would make use of that time to visit the people of Opus Dei, wherever the apostolate is. So last summer of 2019, he actually went to, if you remember, US and Canada. And we actually, in the house of, like in the center where I am, we prepared this card for him. It's like a window. It's a summary of the father's trip. You do like this. I'm not sure if you can see, like you can see all the things where he went. And this is like, I'm saying that you can be with like, he's very approachable. So it's actually a card that we prepared for him to say that we want you to visit the center. Tell us stories about your trip. So yeah, so this is how we go about it, at least when I was in Rome. Yeah. And then I got this because somebody said, yay. So thank you with a blessing.
Zora, we watched many videos previously about the get-togethers with Saint Josemaria. How will it be like with Monsignor Ocariz, with the father this time?
So about the get-togethers, the idea of the get-togethers is actually, family get-together. That's why still, only the father can have the get-together with the people, right? And maybe I would say that every prelate would have different qualities. And I would say that for the father now, the current father, he likes more to listen to people, and he explains in a very brief way, because he directs, he answers directly to the point. And you will see that a topic would be of interest to him when he talks a lot. Like if he spends like 2 minutes answering that question. So hopefully with that, you can really he can really listen to many people. But yeah, some can tell stories about the things that you've been doing, or maybe how you got inspired by the teachings of Saint Josemaria and how you would do outreach. I don't know. He would love to hear those stories. Or you can ask questions, whatever would you think you want him to answer.
Thank you, Zora. That ends our Q&A. We will show you a video about the visit of the father in Texas.
Tranquility Base here. The Eagle has landed. That's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Howdy
know, this idea of the Father coming to Houston.
Howdy, Father.
Howdy.
Howdy.
Just understanding the essence of what Opus Dei is and just being able to sanctify our daily work, you know, and to know that despite your personal circumstances, your occupation and what have you, we're all called to be saints.
Y nosotros, como nos ha enseñado nuestro Padre, lo que tenemos que hacer es transformar precisamente el trabajo en oración, transformar todo en diálogo con Dios, y esa es nuestra fuerza.
Can you explain to us how to make choices while keeping our freedom intact?
Solo por amor se puede hacer con libertad todo, lo que nos gusta y lo que no nos gusta.
My family is still Protestant though, so I would deeply appreciate your prayers that they would find and discover the church.
Rezaré por tus padres. ¿Tú rezas mucho también?
How can we help our children to use technology wisely and prudently?
Y que tienen que ser señores de sí mismos, tienen que mantener su libertad.
Nuestro trabajo nos pone en constante contacto con el sufrimiento humano.
And I love military airplanes.
So how can we better live temperance in today's world?
This year, I've had a lot more one-on-one conversations with my children, particularly when I encourage them to express themselves and I show them that I truly want to listen. They open up to me about themselves, their feelings, their deepest desires, their observations about the world around them. My children teach me so much. They tell me what they think about me.
Si la amistad es mutua, y al ser mutua tiene que haber comunicación en las dos direcciones. El padre y la madre tienen que comunicar lo que llevan dentro, manifestar según ya la edad que se tenga, hacerles partícipes de las propias preocupaciones. Y luego, fundamentalmente, como para todo, y no es una solución fácil, piadosa, sino que es la pura verdad, hay que rezar mucho por los hijos y pedir a los hijos que recen por los padres.
I am a flight controller here at the Johnson Space Center. I work for a subcontractor for NASA. This has always been a dream job for me. I've been a space geek since I was a little kid. I wanted to be an astronaut, all of those things. This weekend, we're celebrating a major anniversary, the 50th anniversary of the landing on the moon. And so, as a question, I actually have a trivia question, and the crowd can help answer this. What was the first word said on the surface of the moon? And the first words said on the moon were Houston the Eagle has landed. And so we have a gift on behalf of everyone here. Houston the Father has landed.
Hello, Father. How are you?
Very well.
Thank you so much for visiting us and for your prayers. As you know, because of an automobile accident that was very serious, I'm unable to be with you there in Houston. And it's really through God's grace and the prayers of many people that I'm doing as well as I am. Father, in 1983, I was blessed to meet Don Alvaro in Mexico. He said that Americans need to have more heart like the Mexicans.
Tener más corazón no es una cuestión de puro sentimiento, de sensiblería, sino que es una cuestión, sobre todo es la voluntad, el querer de verdad a las personas. ¿Y cómo vamos a poder querer más a las personas? Que es querer su bien, interesarnos por las personas, el tener en la cabeza siempre y en el corazón que toda persona es importante, que no hay nadie que ante nosotros esté, que podamos dar por descartada. ¿Y eso cómo lo conseguimos? Solo cuando Dios nos dilata el corazón, cuando Dios nos hace querer más. Y esa fuerza para querer es la caridad de Cristo. Y esa la conseguimos pidiéndosela al Señor.
Padre, yo no vengo a hacerle pregunta, pero más bien a contarle
un favor que recibí de don Álvaro y San Josemaria. Cuando estaba esperando a mi tercer bebé, le diagnosticaron un problema en los cromosomas. Dijeron que no duraría más de 2 semanas, que si nace y no podría caminar o respirar bien o necesitaría soporte. Ahí está María Daniela, 3 años y medio. Sí, María Daniela.
Viendo la expansión de la obra en todo el mundo, aquí en Texas, en Estados Unidos, en toda América, en Europa, en Asia, en África, me viene mucho a la mente el recuerdo de nuestro Padre, ¿no? de los inicios de la obra, ¿no? de la fe de nuestro Padre cuando recibió esta misión, este encargo del Señor, que él luego lo escribía hacía tantísimos años, me decía: queridísimos, Jesús nos urge, quiere que se alce de nuevo, no en la cruz, sino en la gloria de todas las actividades humanas. Veía todo el panorama del mundo.